I don't think anyone can deny that Brutal Doom is technically well made. There are tons of new features, new weapons, and it perfectly executes what it set out to do, which is to make a more brutal version of Doom. I've noticed a divide over this mod, and I don't see why. Some people hate Brutal Doom with a passion, and others think that the mod is the second coming of Doom. Brutal Doom is a good mod, and I respect the love and dedication that went into it, but it's not a game-changing experience. Whenever I boot up Brutal Doom, I play the levels normally for 10 minutes, then I turn on IDKFA to obtain all of the weapons, and I just let loose for a little. I might travel to different maps or something, and then I turn the game off. Brutal Doom is a very polished novelty to me, and while it's really fun seeing the amplified gore and having modern gunplay elements like aiming down sights, I don't see myself playing it more than classic Doom. For those people that were introduced to the franchise with Brutal Doom, that should be cheered on, because they discovered one of the most influential FPS series ever made. As for the mod itself, I find it to be cartoony and entertaining to put on for a few minutes. I know there are several extensions of Brutal Doom, like Project Brutality, but I just played Brutal Doom version 21 along with the Doom Metal soundtrack and Maps of Chaos. There are a few settings in the mod when you start a new game, altering the experience slightly with purest and classic Brutal Doom modes. This is a nice way to give the mod replayability, and the mod itself is just carnage. There is so much to unpack with Brutal Doom, because they added new executions, new weapons with the Mancubus cannons, and now a different Icon of Sin boss fight. You can tell that the creator spent years honing this mod's quality, and with the newest version, it is truly a great experience. The Icon of Sin changes in particular are welcomed, because I am on record with saying that I do not like the original Doom 2 final boss. As for the weapons, they are much more punchy and feature alternate fire modes. All of these additions and updates are nice and help give Brutal Doom an identity of its own. The shotguns and machine guns seem overpowered at first, but that is only the case because of the better demon AI that Brutal Doom implements. The Caco demons will spit out fireballs faster and will chase you down, the imps are very mobile in this mod, the barons and hell knights can shoot out 3 projectiles at once sometimes, etc. These enemy buffs do not feel unfair because of the better weaponry that players have at their disposal, and it all balances itself out very nicely. Headshots are also counted and provide extra damage to the demons, so that is another aspect of the combat that makes things easier, especially with aiming down sights and all. Whenever I play Brutal Doom, I always get into a good groove with aiming down sights, popping demons' heads off, and fully utilizing alternate fire options, but it doesn't replace classic Doom for me. I can tell a lot of time and dedication went into this mod, but there's just something about the simplicity of the original game that keeps me coming back. The blood and guts are increased in Brutal Doom, which is the mod's real claim to fame. I find the gore effects to be extremely polished, and seeing the chunks of flesh getting taken off of the monsters is always satisfying. The blood drips off the ceiling now, there are Mortal Kombat inspired finishes where you can tear enemies' limbs off, there is blood splatter on the walls and floors, etc. The fatalities slow down the pacing a little too much to be used frequently, as well as the melee attacks, but that's either here nor there. I can tell why Brutal Doom got the attention it did, and it's one of the most well-produced mods out there. I find Brutal Doom to be a good mod, but that's about it. I have a very neutral stance on Brutal Doom, and I don't see the outrage that has stemmed from it, at least about the mod itself. It is enjoyable killing demons with these added effects, and the weapons are a lot more punchy too, giving off a different feeling than the original game. Isn't this what a mod is supposed to do? Give you a new experience or enhance what came before? Brutal Doom checks both of those boxes, and while aiming down sights, performing executions, flipping off the monsters, etc. doesn't completely fall in line with classic Doom, no shit, it's not trying to. Brutal Doom might be a little overrated, and it does cast such a huge light that it might take away from the other Doom mods out there, but it's still a brilliant creation. There's some sense of elitism from both sides of the Brutal Doom arguments, and I think they're both silly. Classic Doom purists dismiss Brutal Doom as sheer dumb fun. And yes, that's the point, it's not trying to be high art. It's a Doom mod with tons of gore and blood, and it's not attempting to replace the original game in any way. For those people who think Brutal Doom plays better than Classic Doom, I think that's fair enough. I personally don't agree, and I feel like the best way to play Doom is with no mouse look and no external mods, but I was brought up like that. I didn't really play with mods as a kid, and if I did, I probably would have had more of an attachment to Brutal Doom. This subject is all dependent on how you remember playing Doom, and that kinda rubs on to what you think the game should be now. But either way, people enjoying the mod isn't taking away from the original in the slightest. Like I said, there could be an argument made for Brutal Doom taking away from other mods' popularity, but it's not like it's not a well-made product, because it is. Brutal Doom's newest version adds environmental features that enhance the bland Doom 2 city levels by adding debris, destroyed cars, and other little details. Even though it doesn't make the level design of those maps any better, it makes them more tolerable to play because they actually look like a city now. If you don't like these alterations to the city levels, you can turn it off in the options menu, and that's another excellent aspect about Brutal Doom, the sheer customization of it all. The blood, the weapons, the graphical settings, and everything else that Brutal Doom has to offer can be modified to your liking, which is always nice for people that like to tinker with their settings a lot. Should you play Brutal Doom though? Well, I think that's such a loaded question that you probably already have an opinion on, so there's no real point in me answering. I will say that for me personally, Brutal Doom is a great novelty that is fun to play from time to time, but I don't see it outright replacing Classic Doom anytime soon. Brutal Doom makes Classic Doom feel like an entirely different beast, and for those who want the updated combat mechanics and the increased gore, then this mod is right up your alley. I think people don't take a look at why popular things are popular, or at least don't give the credit that the popular thing deserves, and Brutal Doom is one of those cases. I imagine that Brutal Doom got a lot of people who hadn't played Doom in over 20 years back into playing, and they had newfound enjoyment for the game, which should be celebrated. If some people didn't play Brutal Doom, then they might not have gotten into the franchise, which has got to count for something. As for the reboot games, Doom 2016 has plenty of Brutal Doom's DNA inside there, and it's no coincidence that they both have glory kills and a cartoony attitude. That's another thing that people need to take into consideration. Brutal Doom is inherently stupid and is not supposed to be taken seriously. That also doesn't change the fact that Brutal Doom remains as a very technically sound mod with plenty of features to go around. It's almost overwhelming how many options and little aspects of the mod you can tweak around in the menus. And for those who want to modify their experience as much as possible, they can. And isn't that the whole point of mods to begin with? I'm curious to hear what you guys think of Brutal Doom, since people no doubt have an opinion on it one way or the other. I am pretty apathetic towards the mod, but I also think it's a decent way to waste an afternoon, and when I'm playing, it's very enjoyable. So yeah, thanks for watching.